Pretty Cure All Stars DX2 Light of Hope Protect the Rainbow Jewel is a mouthful of a title and a pretty alright film. I liked watching it a pretty good amount. I thought it was fun. It wasn't anything well, I say it's not anything dramatic, but it was actually pretty dramatic for a fair bit of it. But I think it was kind of a monkey's paw situation from the previous All Stars film, for me at least, because the fresh girls didn't really seem to get to do a ton, in my opinion, in the previous film. And in this one, because it is the season where HeartCatch was introduced, Tsubomi and Erica were pretty much immediately and constantly thrust into the position of needing to do everything to be the ones to defeat Bottom. Now, our Power Bottom antagonist is basically just a big old CGI monster, and I wasn't really a fan of that. And Tsubomi and Erica are the ones who were constantly pushed to be the ones progressing the challenge in order to defeat him. The other girls would take on the antagonists. They would catch them in their tracks or throw moves at them to interrupt them so Tsubomi and Erica could be the ones to go protect the Rainbow Jewel. And it's because it's the season that introduced HeartCatch. We're 5, 6, maybe like somewhere below 10 episodes into HeartCatch PreCure by the time this movie comes out. And so, of course, we're going to show off the new girls. We're going to get them the spotlight, even though they're getting it constantly for the next 49, 50 episodes, and then a movie later on in the season. But they get the focus in this film, too, which is fine, because I was glad that they actually got to be in the spotlight when actually doing the PreCure stuff. Whereas in the last one, it kind of felt like the fresh girls were there to do PreCuring, but we're also mostly just there to get sucked into evil wormholes and then almost be eaten inside of the bad guy who was trying to absorb their power. I thought the antagonist, Bottom, while they don't have a good design, summoning the previous show's antagonists, the minor antags at least, was pretty fun. The previous movie brought about the revival of the different monsters that they fought, the Zakena, the Kawaii, etc., etc. And this one brought about some of our antagonists that they fought over the course of the show, the more humanoid ones, who then, towards the end of the film, turn into their super powered up forms where they're much more monstrous and legally are allowed to be killed. Because we can't kill them when they are humanoid, of course. They have to be monsters. We have to know that they are beyond saving before we can commit to blowing them up into a million pieces with the power of friendship and hope. And we don't even get to do that to the regular antags, because they do eventually fuse into Bottom to become the true final boss of the movie. I don't care for the big CGI monster. There are a whole bunch of different anime movies that will do this, where the final push of the movie, the final boss they have to beat, the final monster and challenge they have to overcome, is the big CGI monster. I have maybe not strong opinions, but moderately strong opinions about the One Piece films handling this, where Film Gold and Film Red and oh shoot, I can't remember another one in between those two. Stampede. All three did the big CGI monster, and Pretty Cure is also a series that is pretty guilty of that. And I don't care for Bottom. There are good ways to do CGI monsters. Film Reds was a very good CGI monster, but this ain't about Film Red. This is about Pretty Cure All Stars DX2 Light of Hope Protect the Rainbow Jewel. And Bottom is not a fun CGI monster. Bottom is a pretty incredibly generic blob shape with arms And even then, the arms are pretty incredibly vaguely defined at first until the pretty cures start flying around him and then he starts flailing around. Like we can't even tell any details on the guy until they're having a beam struggle with him. And even then, it's just like his eyes and mouth. It is Bottom is a being made of pure darkness. That is fine to have evil antagonist whose only purpose is to snuff out the light of hope, but also make them visually interesting. And visually interesting, Bottom is not. He's just kind of dark purple and blue and mad at the pretty cure, which, he served his purpose. He served his purpose in trying to eat hope, the physical embodiment of hope, and then die for it, because of course the pretty cure aren't going to give up that easily, even though it seems like they kind of want to at several points in the film, or at least Tsubomi and Erika, because they are brand new to this whole being a magical girl business. They are in way over their heads with a world-ending threat like this one, and they have no idea what's going on for a lot of it. There are dudes showing up that they've never seen in their life. There are monsters running around attacking them. And there's a big old sea monster coming out of the ocean whose name is Bottom, because he comes from the bottom depths of the ocean. And I guess he's lived there for 1,000 years. Now, he won't anymore because they killed him. So I kind of wish they almost. I almost kind of wish they would have elaborated on why Bottom was down there and sort of what purpose he fulfilled, or sort of what purpose he had before being trapped down there, and then why he was coming out once again. I understand that the Rainbow Jewel is said to open and shine once every 1,000 years. Of course, it lines up perfectly with the events transpiring in this film. But we don't get anything about Bottom's existence. We just know he's been stuck in the depths for 1,000 years. We don't even know stuck. He's just kind of down there amongst hands reaching up towards the sky, which is a fun way to sort of hint at what the antagonists of the film are going to be before it pretty much immediately gets into it, because these are very human hands reaching up towards the light, and we can interpret that as the various antagonists of the shows who all have been defeated while trying to reach for the light of life or hope, or the Garden of Light, or the Rainbow Garden, or any of those various light-associated places and cures who stand in their way and defeat them and send them to hell. But Bottom is just okay. The antagonists coming back is fun, and it's cool getting to see them again, because we get to see the pretty cures anytime they do new promo material, part of the time, but especially when they do the crossover films. That's the biggest appeal of them, is getting to see the new seasons who haven't been around for years, and see kind of how the older characters will interact with the newer ones. And it's cool getting to see the older antagonists as a result of that, and getting to see some of their fights again, but cooler, or bigger, better, faster, and furiouser, and all of the fun stuff that entails. It's also cool when the different cures get to fight the antagonists from different seasons. They do that a couple of times throughout the film, where the antagonists from Splash Star are fighting the Fresh Girls, or some of the antagonists from Max Heart are fighting. The Fresh Girls get a lot of time to actually fight a whole bunch of different people in this film at various points. And Fresh was the most recent season before HeartCatch, so it makes sense that they would be put in the limelight a little. But it is also really fun seeing them go just hand to hand, fist to fist with some of these other antagonists because they throw hands. A lot of the other girls, they'll shoot their magic attacks. They'll have their beams. They'll have their, if your dream, throw my body at you like an intercontinental ballistic missile attack. But the fresh girls get up into it. They throw fisticuffs, kind of like Black and White, and to a lesser extent, Bright and Wendy. Uh, Even though they use a lot more magic than even some of the other girls, which is still fun. But the fresh girls have a very fresh approach to combat, and it's nice seeing what looks to be pretty proficient martial arts used against these antagonists because they will do judo throws or make very hard kicks and throw elbows or block intercept and block attacks to redirect them, not take as much damage themselves. And any of these girls could give the Baki characters a run for their money, but Yujiro still high diffs. The theme park that the movie takes place in probably shouldn't have been reopened after the starting events of the film because the film is fine for a little while. They're hanging out at the theme park, having a fun time. All of the normal people who are just live in the city are like, yeah, we're gonna go check out this theme park that is on a giant weird rock and it's hosted by fairies. But we're just not gonna think about that or the other instances that are pretty unexplainable by technology of how magic is just kind of happening here. We're not going to worry about that. And then the antagonists do an actual terrorism attack on it, blow stuff up, cause rocks to fall down, shatter buildings, etc. And everybody evacuates, as they reasonably should. But then at the end of the film, everything's fine, and they just come back to the theme park. Like, I don't know about you, but the talking magic dogs aren't gonna get me to come back to the theme park where I just saw a guy who has spider arms coming out of his back or lights on fire and shoots fireballs at people or picks up rock and throw rock and destroy an entire bridge. I'm not going back into that place. Maybe I don't know. I guess I would have to actually see that happen. But it is a little funny. I do wish they kind of would have shown a little bit more damage as the theme park escape was actually happening. Because, like, they blow up the bridge by throwing a giant rock at it, but it only breaks the part of the bridge that the rock immediately hits. There's no, like, real danger posed to the people around them. It's purely just to separate the riffraff from the pretty cures, which is fine. You know, like it's doing its job. It's not going over the top, or it's not going the extra mile, but it is getting done what it needs to get done. And it's always fun seeing all of the different cures get their different sequences and seeing our new crew get their different various scenes with the other ones. But the passing of Blossom and Marine between the different groups to get them to the Rainbow Jewel is just okay. I think it's fine that they were the focus and they were the ones, the other girls were like, you guys are the ones that are going to protect the Rainbow Jewel of light, of hope, to protect the world. But, you know, it's just okay. But it is fun. The fights are good. I like the fights. The animation in this film felt, I mean, the animation and the ends of the seasons and at various points in the season, but also in the movies is always like consistently pretty good. But it felt like they were putting a lot more into this one for whatever reason. Just something about the way that they were animating it was it looked like it had a much higher budget than previous films. And I haven't actually looked at what the budget would be for these, but I imagine that they are probably going up just kind of as time goes on, both economically and they have more money to throw at it wise, which also made it kind of funny when Blossom and Marine were posted in different animation styles, I guess. They weren't always animated in the HeartCatch style. There are various points in the film where they are very clearly in a style that works more easily with all of the rest of the characters. Not every season has the same animation director, and so they aren't going to be able to perfectly match the other season's character designs. But up through HeartCatch, they are all relatively similar. And HeartCatch is a pretty big departure from that, which makes things a little complicated for keeping them consistent when Tsubomi and Erika are shown on screen with Nagisa and Honoka. Like it's just kind of a little funny thing. It's not bad. It's just entertaining to notice whenever they change like that, because it'll be shots where it's just Tsubomi and Erika where they are in the HeartCatch style, but it's not all of them. In fact, I think most of those are kept towards the end of the film. And of course, their transformation sequences are, because they have the data for those already. They can just kind of put those into the film as they need. This film also kind of has an interesting way of showing that Tsubomi and Erika feel like newer cures compared to all of the others. Not even just like release order chronologically wise, but in terms of how they are handling being a magical girl that has to deal with world ending threats on a near weekly basis. Because by this point, all of the others have had season or seasons of build up and experience, and they kind of know what they're doing already. So there's going to be that difference between them. But even the previous seasons, right into it, they get an idea of what is expected of them as PreCure. And they will go through their phases of being unsure about themselves or their power and how they want to exist, or any of that kind of doubt that is put into their head or that they come prepackaged with. But Tsubomi and Erika have a point made of that specifically in HeartCatch PreCure, because Tsubomi is weak and she's afraid, and she just moved to a new city and is trying her damnedest to make friends. The only reason she becomes friends with Erika at first is because Erika latches onto her. She makes fun of her a little bit in class, some light fun teasing, and they hit it off and become friends pretty much immediately. But Erika is better at being a PreCure than her at first. Not by a ton, but enough that it puts doubt in her head about her value as a PreCure. And that's kind of a running thread throughout HeartCatch. And this movie reinforces the idea that that doubt exists in her and a little bit in Marine as they encounter the other antagonists, as they encounter the other PreCures, who are so self-assured in their abilities and their ability to defeat the antagonist and save the world, that it sort of drives a wedge of doubt at Tsubomi and Erika, because they aren't used to having to deal with stuff this crazy, which I think, while interesting, could maybe not be as great for the characters, because it just kind of paints them as a little bit mopey, except when they're making goofs throughout the earlier parts of the films, because they are new to being a badass magical girl flying around shooting laser beams and all of that fun stuff. But then they have to deal with an enemy that is power scaled to having to deal with 5 generations of, or 5 seasons, 4 generations of magical girls, whatever, however many it is. They are coming into the game late. They're coming into the game 3 expansions in, getting a level skip, and having to deal with the consequences of that. But it's not bad. They do it fine. It's done in an all right way in the film. It's not bad. It's fun. It's still just a fun watch. None of these are bad watches. This one is just another fun one. I like this one more than the previous one, even though it just puts that maybe not as fun focus on only Tsubomi and Erica. It's just a good watch. They're all good watches, and I really liked the CG dance sequence. I think the CG dance sequence at the end is about the only time in the movie that the CG looked good. Unfortunately, it did not look very good throughout the rest of the film. It was used pretty sparingly, other than Bottom, which is fine, I guess. But the dance sequence is good. This is also movie is one that didn't start with the fourth wall break about explaining the miracle lights, and I kind of wish they would have kept it that way. But then they do break the fourth wall later to tell the audience, to tell everyone, to share your hope so they can power up the PreCure. I was kind of hoping they weren't going to do something quite like that, something that direct, breaking the fourth wall, just because they didn't at the start of the film. Is a much more diegetic explanation of how the miracle lights work and what their purpose is. But they do it anyway, and that's fine. It's fine. It's fun. They're doing their job. The magic dogs, are doing their jobs by explaining the plot and how to get it to work to the audience. And then they got super forms too, which is kind of cool. They actually got 2 super forms, because they got the little bit of power up when they were all flying around with their newly sprouted wings. But then they got actual super forms, where all of the Cures who had them entered something similar to their super forms, or like the earlier ones, black and white. They absolutely hit what are some of their powered up states, and then the other ones had semi-unique versions for this film specifically. But they just kind of get them, which I also kind of didn't care for a little bit, because at the battle at the end, they're just kind of flying around Bottom, hitting him, shooting beams at him, and trying not to get swatted like flies, because that is about the scale of size of this massive, almost eldritch entity climbing out of the ocean, and actual normal sized people flying around in the air around him. There's a little bit of eldritch influence in this movie, and the way the antagonists all sort of merge into this sphere that becomes Bottom when fully formed, and the visage of Bottom of like rising out of the depths. They could have done something really fun with a Lovecraftian inspiration there. They don't, and that's okay. But they could have. That might have been even more fun than what we got. But overall, it's a pretty good film. It's okay. I think it's solid 6 out of 10. But it's fun. It's worth a watch. They're all worth a watch. It's a good time. We love PreCure in this house.